Quick heads up, this story gets graphic and disturbing. Viewer discretion advised.
Today, we'll break down the tragic story of Mr. Timothy Jones Jr. to figure out how a father of 5 young kids turned into this monster actually. What became the most terrifying part wasn't how he did it, but why he chose to do it. Look, you need to watch until the very end because that portion will uncover what exactly pushed him to this insane step, but also how dozens of warnings went completely ignored. Hey everyone, we won't hold things up, just let me know what city you're from. What time do you have right now? What kind of weather do you have? What item rests just to your right at this very moment?
So, today's case, we're talking about Timothy Jones Jr. And my God, this person, I'll just say it up front, this case isn't just unpleasant. It's one of those cases that, I don't know, makes you feel like you need to take a shower afterward. It's a grim, heavy story. Timothy was a father of 5 young children, but he wasn't, as they say, a good person. Honestly, he wasn't even just a bad father. That word, it's just too weak. He literally did not care about the well-being of anyone around him, including his own children. I mean, imagine that level of self-centeredness. The only person he ever thought about, the only reality that existed for him was himself. So I have to give a serious warning for today's video. This is not easy content. So please keep that in mind before listening further. If you're having a bad day, maybe set this one aside. But weirdly enough, this case wasn't widely covered in the media. I'm honestly shocked by that fact. Why don't more people know about this story? There's one more thing that's maybe the most infuriating part of the story. It's that there were so many systemic failures. This was not a tragedy that happened in a vacuum. It could have been stopped. Because of that, because of those failures, the lack of coverage, I feel it's important to bring it to you. But yes, this is a heavy one. I'm warning you one last time. Let's get into it. Timothy Jones Jr. was born sometime in 1982. They couldn't even find his exact date of birth. It's believed he grew up in Mississippi, but later moved to Lexington, South Carolina, which is exactly where this whole drama unfolds. Timothy had, as they say, a very difficult childhood. I know I say that a lot, but in Timothy's case, that doesn't even begin to cover it. This isn't an excuse. It's an attempt to find the root of, well, this darkness. There's also an incredibly tangled family history here that I'm going to try to unpack, but it really is complex. I've tried to simplify it, but there are going to be a lot of names, so just bear with me. There were 3 key figures in Timothy's upbringing: his dad, his mom, his grandmother. Here's where the real horror starts. Let's start with the grandmother named Roberta. From a very, very early age, Roberta went through traumatic violation. So that was the grandmother's past, Roberta's. Now let's move to Timothy's father, Timothy Sr. As we know, Timothy Sr. was born as a result of what happened to his mother, Roberta, with her stepfather. Obviously, the stepfather was Timothy Sr.'s biological father. Then, when Cynthia was 16, she met Timothy Sr., 2 traumatized souls. They both dropped out of school, they got married. Cynthia, of course, soon became pregnant, then had Timothy Jr., the one this story focuses on.
Yeah, that's a very, very complex family history. Believe me, I really simplified this version because there were so many more details, but it already felt convoluted. But let me just break it down for you one more time, just so we're all on the same page. That led to the birth of Timothy Sr. Obviously, he also had a very rough childhood. Then one day, Cynthia just took baby Timothy, vanished, just got up, left with the child, disappeared for months. Imagine the horror of that. Timothy's father, Timothy Sr., eventually managed to track them down. Eventually, because of this situation, Timothy Sr. received full custody of Timothy Jr. Here's where the explanation comes in. After this incident, Cynthia was finally diagnosed with schizophrenia. She was placed in a hospital for treatment where she remained indefinitely. Indefinitely turned out to be a very long time. 2 decades passed before Timothy Jr. ever saw his mom again. He was only 2.5 years old when his mother vanished from his life. So, for most of his life, Timothy Jr.'s upbringing, his support, came from his father, Timothy Sr. Remember his childhood? The chaos just shifted into another form. So, to recap, now Timothy Sr. has full custody. They move in with his grandmother, Roberta. Seems like stability, finally. Nope. From this moment on, things do not improve. Timothy's father remarried. Timothy's grandmother, Roberta, also remarried.
He wasn't the same Timothy. His entire personality shifted. After the accident, he began to suffer from clinical depression, from severe paranoia. He started hearing voices. He experienced hallucinations. But not only that, then 2 more significant things happened in Timothy's youth. First, he joined the Navy. This was something he apparently always dreamed of. He, interestingly, looked forward to the physical discipline. Maybe he felt he needed boundaries. But his service in the Navy was, to put it mildly, very short. He was discharged after only 6 weeks. The second major incident, when Timothy was 19, he landed in prison. After failing in the Navy, he fell into a life of crime, stole several cars, forged some checks. But there was something, different about this prison stay. He was sent, I don't know if it was some kind of special youth facility or what, maybe because he was 19. But part of his sentence involved going through a very strict boot camp. All of it shaped the man Timothy would become. So it's now 2003. Timothy's 21. I just can't get over how young he was, how much he'd already experienced. He just got out of prison. It seems he's thinking, hey, maybe it's finally time to change my life. That's when Timothy finds religion. He joins a Pentecostal church, one that holds very strict fundamentalist Christian beliefs. It seems things are looking up. He goes to college. He gets a degree in computer engineering. He finds a good job, decent pay. He meets his future wife, Amber. Now, Timothy Amber, they hit it off immediately. Just a few weeks after meeting, Timothy proposes to Amber. Timothy's family was reportedly very against it. Why? Well, they were too young. They had just met. They had known each other for maybe 3 weeks tops. Already engaged. Marriage isn't something you just rush into. But Timothy's family also accused him of proposing to Amber only because of his new church, its fundamentalist beliefs. They didn't believe in intimacy before marriage. So the family thought Timothy just wanted to marry Amber so they could be intimate. But Timothy didn't care what his family thought. He ignored their completely rational warnings. Just 6 weeks after meeting, Timothy and Amber were married. 6 weeks. That's not just fast. That's impulsive. It's way too fast, right? Of course, the couple very quickly has 3 children. Timothy finds a new job, not just any job, but a very well-paying position. He lands a spot at the tech giant Intel. His salary jumps to $80,000 a year. For that time place, that's serious money. This was the American dream everyone talks about. It's for this job that the whole family uproots. They leave Mississippi, move to Lexington, South Carolina. But there's a catch. Despite that salary, the family moves into a trailer. Maybe it was temporary, maybe to save money, but that's where they lived. At first, everything seemed to be going perfectly. For Amber, this looked like the start of a new wonderful life. Timothy acted like a good father, a caring husband. He had a prestigious job. He completely provided for the family. It was an idyllic picture. But we know that in stories like this, that idyllic picture, it's just the calm before the storm. Then it began. The reason for the change was the strict religious code Timothy supposedly lived by. Keyword, supposedly. He didn't just live by it himself. He informed her that from now on, her only role was to be a submissive wife. This wasn't a dialogue. It was an ultimatum. What this meant in practice. First, total control over her appearance. She was no longer allowed to wear makeup. She was forbidden from cutting her hair. She wasn't even allowed to wear pants, only dresses or skirts.
She was required to quit her job immediately. She literally wasn't allowed to have her own income or career. Her place was at home. Timothy made it clear this was all she was good for. Her functions were reduced to maintaining the house reproduction. But even that wasn't enough. She had to completely sever her social ties, stop spending time with friends or even her own family. She effectively had to erase any life or identity she had before him. She was required to become a shadow, existing only to fulfill everything her husband needed. Here's where the real, classic hypocrisy kicks in. While Amber had to live in this new world of rules he created, Timothy himself could do whatever he wanted. None of those strict rules applied to him, of course. It was a dictatorship, masked as religious piety. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning. Things didn't just fail to improve. They were spiraling into an abyss. We fast forward to 2011. Timothy's almost 30. Their 3 children are a little older. This marks the first time the Department of Social Services, or DSS, gets involved in their story. That acronym, DSS, will pop up in this case again. Unfortunately, each time it's a story of inaction. So, the first call to DSS didn't actually come from Amber. Neighbors complained about Timothy because of his extremely aggressive, unstable behavior. So, Timothy was reported, social workers arrived at their trailer, they examined the children. You'd think after words like that, some decisive action would follow. But no, because of this report, the family simply received a so-called safety plan. This right here marks the tragedy of systemic indifference. That safety plan was never implemented. No one followed up. Everything in the house continued exactly as it had before. Over time, it only got worse. So, 2012 arrives. During this time, Amber had 2 more children. Now they have 5. Over the next few years, more new reports kept coming into DSS. Each time, the scenario repeated itself with a sort of awful bureaucratic precision. A social worker would come, assess the situation, say something needs to change, develop another so-called safety plan. That's where it ended. The safety plan never got implemented. No one ever returned to the house for a follow-up check. Absolutely nothing happened. The system just put a check mark on a report. Most of these new reports.
It all started during a family shopping trip. Timothy and Amber started arguing. This argument didn't stop when they got in the car to drive home. They're speeding down the road, Timothy flooring the gas, going way too fast. Even though reports of these incidents continue to flow into DSS, the reaction stays the same. A social worker arrives, writes up another useless safety plan. That's it. Summer 2012 arrives. At this point, Amber apparently reached her breaking point. She began a relationship with a neighbor. Of course, in that environment of total control, Timothy found out very quickly. He became enraged. How could this happen? He expected Amber to be his submissive property, enduring everything he did. But, oddly enough, Timothy's reaction was sharp, unexpected. He just gathered all his things, packed his bags, left, taking all 5 children with him. He returned to his home state of Mississippi. To be closer to his family, simply left Amber alone in South Carolina. After this, Timothy completely forbade Amber from having any contact with the children. The cherry on top, Timothy filed for divorce. In court, he requested full custody of all 5 children. When asked the reason for the divorce, he stated Amber had an affair. Quote, "She kept a messy home," the same home DSS had previously described as unsafe for life. He also said Amber had a bad lifestyle. The audacity of this man. It's just off the charts, isn't it? Amber, of course, tried to fight for her children. But how? With what resources? Socially, financially. He forced her to quit her job, so she didn't have a single penny. She flat out had no money to hire a lawyer who could present her side of the story. She had no connections left, not with friends, not with family. He made her burn every bridge to her old life. She found herself in a vacuum. Because of that, she had no way, or worse, she felt like she had no way to fight back. She felt broken. However, this next part, perhaps the most tragic, a small, twisted part of her mind still clung to the idea that Timothy could be a good father. This a classic terrible effect of long-term abuse. She thought he would at least care for the children. Perhaps they would be better off with him because he had that prestigious job at Intel. She looked at the situation pragmatically. I have nothing. I have no money. I can't provide for them. She genuinely believed they would be better off with him. While we, right now, understand how far from the truth that was.
In the end, late 2013, the court made its decision. Received full custody of all 5 children. Amber, the victim, received only visitation rights. Weekends, some holidays. This court decision, unfortunately, became the actual turning point, the catalyst that set an irreversible process in motion. From this point, everything spiraled straight down. So, having received this court-sanctioned approval for solo parenting, Timothy, the 5 children, returned to that same miserable trailer in Lexington, South Carolina. Only now, Amber wasn't there. There was no one left to act as a buffer. He remained alone with the children. Let's just register the ages of these children, just to understand the scale. Mara, 8 years old, Elias, 7, Nathan, 6, Gabriel, 2 years old, the youngest, Elaine, just 1 year old. A whole crew of little ones. Timothy now finds himself forced to send the older kids to school because previously they were homeschooled. That was another one of his rules. He forced Amber to teach them at home, even though she had no qualifications, no desire. She felt uncomfortable in that role. But now Amber's gone, he has to delegate that to the school. He also starts hiring babysitters. It seems he suddenly realized the gigantic amount of work Amber was actually doing, while he played the strict patriarch.
What else is new, right? Every single report that came into DSS either got ignored completely or, best case scenario, someone drove out, checked a box, filed another report, which then just collected dust on a shelf, no real action. But it wasn't just the teachers raising the alarm. The babysitters he hired, they also saw everything. One time, this family took a trip to Disneyland. When I read that, I was shocked. It just seemed so out of character for Timothy, a trip to Disneyland. Of course, this sitter also reported Timothy to DSS several times. Again, nothing was done. Complete, absolute criminal inaction. One time. Just one time. I just want you to absorb this number. In total, DSS received 12 calls, TWELLV separate reports. That means there were 12 chances, 12 opportunities to do something here. 12 times the system could have worked, but every single time, nothing happened. From my research, I honestly don't know what exactly was happening with Amber at this specific moment. She seems to have fallen out of the story, all that's known. Timothy did absolutely everything in his power to prevent her from seeing the children, despite the court-ordered visitations. So we're right at the end. It's now August 2014. We are literally weeks away from the tragedy. One more final call comes into social services. A warning call. Again, a miracle of miracles, a caseworker actually goes to the house. On top of this, Timothy openly tells the caseworker he doesn't want to send the kids to public school anymore. Why? Because, he says this out loud, the teachers keep reporting him to social services. Then he got back on Google. This time, he looked up campgrounds reservations. Then, countries with no extradition laws. He was already planning his escape. He drove out of the state into neighboring Alabama. It's perfectly clear what was happening in his head. He wanted to erase them from the face of the earth, flee. The level of grandiosity, the disconnection from reality. Just stunning. After what he did, he's still worried about heaven. Everything, as always, revolved only around him. So Timothy drives around Alabama aimlessly for days. He's just trying to figure out what to do next. Eventually, he makes a plan. He writes it down. This note, one of the most disgusting pieces of evidence in the case. He was even caught on surveillance at a Walmart, calmly buying saws, dust masks, safety goggles, acid. Timothy actually started this process. He began, but thankfully, even a monster like him couldn't go through with it. Timothy really thought he would get away with all of it. Thankfully, he was wrong. 8 days passed. We're on September 6, 2014. Timothy had been on the run for 8. By then, Timothy, the children had been reported missing by everyone. The babysitter he texted, family members, of course, Amber. The authorities were already looking for him. Eventually, he got caught. But it didn't happen because of brilliant detective work. Timothy was pulled over by regular patrol officers. They suspected he was driving under the influence. They were right. He was completely intoxicated. When the police ran his info through the system, they saw he was wanted in South Carolina for questions related to child custody. That provided enough reason for a search. The officers searched the car. That's the end. After that collection of findings, Timothy, of course, was immediately arrested. As soon as he was taken to the police station, something happened that personally surprised me. Timothy confessed fairly quickly. I expected a man who so methodically tried to escape would drag this out, stay silent, demand lawyers until the very end. But no, he started talking, though of course he immediately tried to spin it and build his own narrative. We'll get to his version because it's very telling. He did talk though, back then in that first interview. He perhaps consciously started planting the seeds for his future defense. He started using the classic lines, "Oh, I heard voices." Then, even more absurd, "My children were conspiring against me. That's why I did it." Conspiring? Seriously? 2-year-old Gabriel, 1-year-old Elaine? It's so ridiculous it doesn't even need commentary. He also really wanted to make it clear that these acts supposedly weren't planned. Maybe you could argue that what happened to Nathan wasn't premeditated, though personally, I don't believe that. But what happened to the other 4 children, he definitely planned. It's important to understand this. Premeditation doesn't mean you have to be plotting for weeks or months. Premeditation, legally speaking, can mean you planned it 5 minutes before, or even 30 seconds. The very fact of having the thought, I am going to do this, then carrying out that action, that makes it premeditated. 5 years passed. Only in April 2019 would Timothy finally stand trial for his crimes.
6 weeks.
You were married after 6 weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
Early in your relationship, did you attend church together?
Yes, ma'am.
Explain how that happened.
When I met Tim, he was already involved in the church. I was not. I was working 3 jobs. I thought, wow, this guy has it together. He was going to school part-time, working part-time, and had church under the belt. I started going with him to these services, and we found a church family together.
So I want to ask a little bit more about that. You said you dated 6 weeks before marriage. What
Yes.
was it that encouraged you to marry Timothy Jones after the 6 weeks before?
In the church that we were attending, I guess you could say they didn't believe in long dating periods. They felt like it was too enticing to be around each other and not be married. So in retrospect, we decided to get married. He was already speaking in the church, and we thought that it was more appropriate to get married.
And you mentioned that he had a job and was attending school. Where was he attending school back then when you first met?
College of DuPage.
DuPage, and that's in Illinois.
Yes, ma'am.
What was his undergraduate degree, or what type of degree was he pursuing at that time?
I believe he was going for pediatric doctor, something along those lines. I don't know the specific word for it.
So he spoke with you about that as far back as when the two of you first met?
Yes, ma'am.
That he wanted to be a doctor.
Yes.
What else attracted you to him?
Tim was very goal-oriented. Sorry.
You mentioned that you attended.
Very smart man. And everything that he had set out to do as a goal, he accomplished, and I found that very honorable. That's one of the main things that attracted me to him.
I'm not entirely sure why the justice system moved so slowly. 5 years, a huge amount of time. But Timothy, as expected, pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. So I assume preparing for that took all the time. His defense built on what he'd been saying, that he had undiagnosed schizophrenia. He claimed that at the time of the events, he couldn't distinguish right from wrong. Yes, with his very first confession about voices, he was definitely planting those seeds for a future insanity plea. However, an expert evaluation, that's not the same as a first interview. During the trial, a psychiatrist, after a thorough examination, concluded that Timothy was, both legally, morally, absolutely aware that what he was doing was wrong. He didn't have schizophrenia.
Me being at the house and feeding the kids oatmeal all day, it wouldn't really be nothing. I probably remember one time he came back with Little Caesar's pizza. It was like only one box of Little Caesar's pizza. But other than that, that's what I fed the kids all day, is oatmeal. I just remember after I stopped keeping them, I asked Miss Elke to please make sure that she fed them, because I wasn't too sure how he fed them at nighttime. I just remember me feeding them oatmeal all day. And I remember a certain time when they had told me, it was one day that he was getting off work, and they just kept asking for oatmeal all day, and I fed them. You know, any kids, I'm going to feed them. I don't care how much that kid done ate, like an hour, 2 hours ago, I'm going to feed them. And I remember they said, Miss Joy, could you not tell Daddy you just fed us?
He was essentially just faking the symptoms. I guess he hoped he'd get away with it because if you remember, his mother did have schizophrenia. He apparently saw the symptoms, tried to copy them. The prosecution shattered this defense. They argued that Timothy took very specific, intentional measures to cover up what he did. I mean, just look at all his Google searches about decomposition, jurisdictions.
His actions after the events, the whole escape, buying the bleach, all of it screams that he truly knew what was right, what was wrong. In the end, the jury agreed. After 6 hours of deliberation, which really quite fast for such a complex case, the jury found Timothy guilty of all 5 counts.
As to indictment 2015 GS 320188, 0189, 0190, 0191, 0195, the state versus Timothy Ray Jones Jr. We, the jury, unanimously agree on the existence of an aggravating circumstance. And it is so signed by the foreperson. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, have found beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following statutory. Now recommend to the court that the defendant, Timothy R. Jones, Jr., be sentenced to death.
On June 13th, 2019, Timothy Jones Jr. was sentenced to death. But the story didn't end there. After the trial, as it should have, the glaring failures of DSS, the Department of Social Services, were finally investigated. The staff at South Carolina DSS, they were underqualified. Their caseloads were absolutely excessive. The overall system, inadequate. This was a case where the system just failed. I completely agree. There were far too many of those failures in this story. It's hard not to point a finger at a system that had so many red flags did nothing. He went to college. He earned an engineering degree, which itself a luxury in today's world. It shouldn't be a luxury, but it a fact. Then he found a job with very, very good pay. He had a wife, 5 beautiful children. He literally could have had it all, but he consciously chose not to. Chose to destroy everything. Mara Jones had long, beautiful brown hair, which she reportedly often called her Rapunzel hair. Her family said she had a wide, bright, beautiful smile that could light up any room she entered. She was only 8 years old. Elias Jones had beautiful blonde hair, blue eyes. He loved being outdoors, collecting all kinds of animals. His family said he was the real charmer of the family. He was only 7 years old. Nathan had dark brown hair, bright blue eyes. He never went anywhere without his favorite stuffed animal, which he loved to hug. He also adored Woody from Toy Story, dreamed of becoming a sheriff, just like Woody, when he grew up. He was only 6 years old. Gabriel Jones had golden blonde hair, big, just crystal blue eyes. He had a constant, very contagious smile. His family said Gabriel truly lived up to his name. He was one of a kind, with an angelic, very gentle personality. He was only 2 years old. Elaine Jones had brown hair, amazing brown eyes. She always wanted her own personal juice, her own blanket. She loved attention, was a sweet, determined girl who always knew what she wanted. Her family said she truly was a rainbow after the storm. She was only 1 year old. It's just incredibly moving, devastating, isn't it? I wish this case never had to happen. As always, Abby we're waiting for you in the comments. Share your thoughts, theories, perspectives on this terrible story. Rest in peace, poor babies. You certainly weren't at fault for anything. May you be safe now. Amen. We thank you for watching. We invite you to check out the next videos, which you can see in front of you. But if you've had enough for today, I invite you to the comments. It's always interesting there.